What up, Seatronauts? Sky back with you with another episode of More Than Music podcast. This week, I have a very unique podcast for you. It's actually an archived audio file from a podcast episode that I had recorded in London, England, when my family was on vacation in the summer of 2019. Now, I won't digress too much, but the reality is Solsi wanted to start this podcast a couple of years ago. It fell through the works. We were on tour, things came up, and then the pandemic hit and everything changed. So my intention was to have this episode that I recorded in the summer of 19 come out in due time. But of course, fast forward 2 years later, and now I'm able to finally get it out. So this episode is with an incredible busking musician. So a street performer, for those of you that aren't familiar with busking, a street performing singer-songwriter, guitar player, Owen Hughes. He's originally from Wales in the UK, moved out to London to pursue dentistry. You're going to hear all about it in this episode. He and I go in depth on how he started as a musician, of course, what he does outside of music. And we go in depth on the formalities of busking in not only London, but Europe in general, which is far different than what we have here in the US and what Soul Seed has been used to over the years when we play on the street in between shows on tour. So very interesting conversation there. Some of his influences, how his parents have influenced and supported him as well. And we just have a great conversation. Really sweet kid. Owen has done some incredible things since I met him in the summer of 2019. So I'm going to share that because I will have an updated follow-up interview to this one in a later date, maybe in a few months. I will check back in with Owen and get an update from him then. But I will tell you, he's done some incredible things that we allude to quickly in this episode. Very, very proud of him. Stoked for him. A couple things I want to preface with before you get into this episode. I was on vacation. I ran into Owen while my family was visiting the National Gallery in London. We were in an art museum. I came out of it. I heard incredible music in Trafalgar Square down the way a little bit, and I ran into Owen, and long story short, I connected with him, and I explained that in the episode. But he actually came across London, took a train to meet me across London to have the interview, and we met in a cafe. So you will hear, I recorded on my phone, so it's not as clean as the rest of these interviews, and I apologize about that. If you're hard of hearing, I apologize in advance. If you have sensitive hearing, I apologize in advance because there's a little bit of tapping. You hear blenders. We're in like a coffee smoothie shop. You hear some of that stuff in the background. It's quite nice ambiance. I don't think it's terrible. We tried to fix the audio best we could for you, but the reality is, unfortunately, that's what we had to deal with. But I'm so excited that Owen was able to meet me. He and I had a spur of the moment meeting and greeting and had a great talk and interview. Also, unfortunately, because I was on the road and this is on my phone, the audio is not the best. You're going to hear some ambient sounds in the background. So I apologize in advance. But also, I don't have video for this one. So I have the intro for you here to introduce the episode, but I don't have the video. So for those of you on YouTube, maybe you can check out just the podcast if you want to, and the podcast listeners, it'll be all the same. But unfortunately, we don't have video. Next time I interview Owen, we definitely will. One more disclaimer. We mention Owen's current, or his previous, I should say, Instagram handle. It was OVVEN, like Owen Hughes. He has changed it now to Owen Hughes Music, OWENHUGHES Music. Owen Hughes Music on Instagram. Check him out. Incredible singer-songwriter. He's done some amazing things. Beautiful voice. Better person. So check it out. Without any further ado, my interview from 2019 with my new friend, Owen Hughes.
Welcome to the More Than Music podcast, hosted by us, Soul Seed. We'll be sharing tour stories, lyric breakdowns, and insights into our approach to music, the art, as well as the business. We'll also be interviewing some of the friends and family we've made throughout the years in the spirit of sharing their many marvelous trials and triumphs. So get comfortable and join us as we explore more than music.
Today is my fourth day in London, England, and I have the absolute pleasure of sitting here with Owen Hughes. a musician. I saw Busking out on the street in front of the National Gallery, and I heard him playing a couple songs. I went down to check him out, and I was very, very surprised to hear the sound and just in general, the music coming out, filling up the entire quad. It was quite impressive. And so I made a video of him. I put him up online on Instagram and Facebook, and he turned around and shared that video, and I knew he was paying attention, so I hit him up out of the blue and decided to meet up here at my favorite cafe here in London so far. We're at Tootie's and having a great time. Owen, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for taking out some time, man. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. I appreciate you. And you sent me your bio earlier, and so I've read about it a little bit. You and I have been through some things, but for the people listening, let's start from the beginning. We're in London now, but you're originally from Wales.
Yeah, that's
right. And to be clear, Wales is not part of England.
No, it's not. No.
Can you please explain what it's like to grow up in Wales in general, in the UK, and what the separation is there between Wales and England?
So essentially, there are sort of four main countries that make up the United Kingdom. So you have England, as everyone knows, Scotland, people know about that as well. Then you have Wales and Northern Ireland. And the union of these four countries makes the United Kingdom. I'm obviously from a country called Wales, which is to the west of England. There's a border that I live very close to the border actually, which is why my accent is pretty English. But I'm still very, very patriotic. A lot of Welsh people are very, very proud to be Welsh and like to have the separation between England and Wales. Wales is a Celtic country, so closely related, sort of Irish and Scottish sort of relatives. We have a Welsh language, which unfortunately I don't speak, because about 100 years ago, a lot of the English sort of workers and corporations came in and they took over and stopped people from speaking Welsh. But there's a very, very strong mining culture in Wales, and there's valleys, and we're proud to have some of the best coal in the world.
Oh wow!
Well, historically, not anymore. You know, all the mines have shut down. Margaret Thatcher did that in the 80s.
Oh.
But yeah, very, very proud sort of working class valley background. And I come from a pretty small town called Monmouth. Actually, I live about 200 meters away from where Bohemian Rhapsody was recorded.
Oh, really?
In the studios, yeah. So a little bit of a claim to fame. Yeah. So,
not to cut you off, but on the flight over here, which is a 10-hour flight from where I'm at in America, in Oregon, all the way across the United States, and then all the way across the pond. I had 10 hours, and I watched two videos. And one of them was Bohemian Rhapsody. I hadn't seen it yet. I've been a fan of Queen for a long time, but I haven't actually seen the movie. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. I watched it on the flight as well.
Actually. Very, very powerful. Anyway, incredible. Not to cut you off, but I thought it was a good little
really cool,
segue there.
But so I obviously come from Wales, and a lot of my sort of background spent there, sort of in quiet. Rugby is a very, very, very passionate thing in Wales. A lot of people play rugby. I'm not sure if you're aware of it.
I'm aware of rugby. We play American football, and I played American football for 15 years. But I love rugby, and I'm very much, I'm a sports guy for sure.
Yeah, cool, man. So rugby is something that sort of everyone does in Wales. I was lucky enough, actually, in my first year of university to play for Wales under 20s. So that's something that I've been, and I'm now semi-professional as well in London, so I get paid for that on the side. I moved to London about 3 years ago to sort of pursue my career in dentistry. So that's what I'm studying at university at the minute, going into my 4th year of 5 years. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. Very, very busy all the time, obviously with the rugby and with the the music now as well. But I'm still just that sort of country boy, small town boy, trying to make it big in London.
That's awesome, man. Good for you. And I mean, again, we mentioned before coming on here, you really do have a unique sound vocally.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I don't bullshit people. I'm a pretty straight shooter. I've been a musician for a decade, and there's nothing worse than people telling you things that aren't true or trying to build you up a false hope. And I just want you to know that I know we're strangers. We're literally meeting just out of the blue, but I just want you to know that it's a very genuine sound, and I was quite impressed. So.
Thank you very much.
So back to Wales really quick, just your upbringing, and then we'll get into you moving to London and England, and pursuing dentistry and music. You mentioned it's a kind of small town, country vibe.
Yeah.
In the kind of the valleys.
Yeah.
My parents live in a similar area, actually, in Northern California, on the west coast of America.
Yeah.
And it's just small town. There's, there's like 700 people in the town.
That is small.
A lot of ranches, a lot of farms, living off the land, all these other things.
Beautiful.
Did you grow up that way? Do you have siblings? Do you have a big family? Do you have a small family? Were you kind of working blue collar from the beginning when you were a little kid?
Yeah. Well, I was very fortunate in that there was a very good school in my town, really quite famous for rugby, and because I played rugby, I managed to get a scholarship into the school. So I was obviously always studying. So in my spare time, I was trying to I worked in bars and stuff like that. But my family is quite small, quite sort of close knit. My dad's family are obviously from further into the valleys, so I'm closer to the border now. So it's a lot of Welsh people would say it's a very English part of Wales. But I live right next to loads of farms and stuff like that, so we used to like walking the dogs and stuff all around, and loads of sheep. Wales is very famous for sheep. But yeah, so I've kind of grown up in that environment. I've been working, sort of in my summer holidays and stuff to sort of save up money to invest in my sort of guitars and my equipment and stuff like that. But that's kind of where I've been.
So have you always been a musician? I mean, were you playing music as a little kid?
Yeah, well, I had quite a sort of strange kind of story with it. I mean, I'm not from a musical background at all. My family, well, my dad boasts that he can sing Delilah by Tom Jones very well, which he can, in fairness to him. He's very good on the karaoke. But my mum's tone deaf. Like I wasn't pushed into it at all, which in some degree has kind of held me back. In that I would have if I'd have been pushed into it from an earlier age, I might have been further ahead. But I'm happy in that it found me in a way. It wasn't something that I was forced to do or I was trained to do. And I had the only sort of music teaching I had, because I never studied it in school, was guitar lessons. I had classical guitar lessons for about 3 to 4 years. And that sort of gave me my foundation in music. By no means expert, but I had the backing then to move on to chords and to want to play guitar and pop songs and stuff like that, and that's kind of where it all started. But no singing at all then.
I have a very similar background actually too. So it's funny. I think we actually relate a lot more than we even know right now. So I grew up a sports kid in a blue collar family.
Oh, really?
Working. My parents worked their ass off my whole life. Yeah. My brother and I played sports our whole lives. And I was actually on my way to play baseball. Awesome. I was hoping to play like college professional baseball. Long story, but basically just life happened and I wasn't able to do it, and I didn't get a scholarship. So I went to school for regular, and then just I faded out. Yeah. But I'm very sports heavy. Yeah. But I moved from California to Oregon, about 9 hours north on the West Coast, and music found me too. So I moved into some new guys, some strangers, and we just started playing. And I've always been rapping and making beats on the computer.
Nice.
But they play guitar and bass and drums, and we're like, hey, come on over and let's just jam. And we did. And
organic.
10, 12 years organic. Yeah. 10, 12 years later, I've been able to do some fun things with music all over the U.S., which is great. It's really cool that you have kind of the similar background. Now, I know you as a solo musician. Yeah. Are you primarily a solo musician? Do you ever play with others, duet, trio, group?
Well, I've kind of always been solo. I have more recently, I suppose, over the last few months, as I've been pushing it a bit more and I've been sort of a bit more invested in it. I've got friends. There's one girl called India who I'm friends with, who was a girl from my old school. She was the year above me in school. I never really spoke that much, but having seen each other, I always followed her because she's now a musician and she's been doing it a bit longer than I have. She knows a little bit more about it than I do. But we've sort of reconnected over the last few months, and we've been sort of working together and writing songs and stuff like that. And there's a video on my Instagram where we did a duet of a Billie Eilish song, Khalid, which was really fun. And it's just like I'm kind of at the point where I'm very fresh, but I'm not letting that hold me back in the sense I'm happy to meet whoever I can, gain any experience I can. I'm pretty much like a blank canvas in that sense.
That's the right attitude to have, brother. Yeah. It really is. I mean, when you're young, literally age-wise, but you're young as a musician. Yeah. The best thing you can do is be
open-minded, open heart, you know, and just collab with who you can, you know, have these kind of collaborative interviews and meet new people, like you said. And I know that you have some other opportunities right now on the horizon, which are awesome. And you have some things coming at you, which, from what I understand in the short relationship, has really come out of busking. So before we get into music fully, you know, grew up in Wales, as we mentioned. Came over here to London a few years ago. Okay, and that was what?
2016.
2016, and that was to pursue dentistry at the university. So why dentistry? And you made a comment. You sent me a message of your bio and things, and and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just kind of got the idea that you maybe felt a responsibility to provide for your family, and being the first person to maybe go to a 4-year university or more than 4 years. I kind of had a similar thing as well. I was the first person in my family to go to school and eventually do university, and felt a little bit of pressure, although it wasn't put on me. I kind of put it on myself. Explain that a little bit. Like, why did you feel, if you did, that you had a certain responsibility to provide for your family as, you know, the kid, really? I mean, you know, trying to give back. What is that about?
So, kind of similar to you, really. It is kind of an assumed responsibility as opposed to my parents being like, you have to do this, because my parents have been the most nurturing parents I've ever, you know, anything that I've done, they've backed me, supported me, and I've flourished in whatever I've done, whether it's, you know, knitting or, you know, it could be anything, and my parents always backed me with it. In terms of feeling that responsibility, I suppose it's just like a debt I kind of feel like I owe to my parents for just being my parents, and you know, they've worked very, very hard. You know, we're pretty working class, and my mum and my dad have both worked hard their entire lives. So I pursued that. I found. I mean, I don't want it to sound like I'm just doing it for the money. But dentistry is known to be, you know, a lucrative career.
Absolutely.
And, I wanted originally to do something in the medical field. I did a bit of work experience back in Wales with a doctor, just in a general practice. And I wasn't 100% sure. And then literally I was walking through a careers convention that they held at my old school, and I saw the dentist, and I sat down with the dentist, and he said, look, it's got aspects of medicine, you know, you'll have the title of doctor, you know, you still have all these things, but at the end of the day, you got a good job out of it, and you know, you're working 9 to 5, it's a nice career, a nice lifestyle, and that really resonated with me. I then went and did a little bit of work experience with a dentist that we knew, and I really enjoyed it. I find it really, really interesting, and obviously being able to help people. I was thinking of this the other day, actually. It's quite funny. So I put it down to wanting to make people smile, which is a bit cliche, but whether that's through dentistry or even on the street, exactly. Yeah. So that I think that's the buzz that I get when I see people enjoying my work or appreciating what I'm doing. That's what I'm getting the buzz from, and dentistry really does give me that. So it's something that I've been pursuing.
Well, good for you. That's awesome that you found something. Obviously, you're passionate about the music. That's how you and I have connected. But you're clearly also passionate, not just dentistry specifically, but you're right, nurturing others and helping them with health and living a fuller lifestyle. So good for you for finding something. And then in turn, your family, of course, I don't know anything about your family. I'm not going to judge by any means or make assumptions, but living in a small town, living in an old kind of coal mining community and things like that. Like, my family lives in a similar area where there's no money in town. Any of the money that comes in comes from somewhere else. And so if you are able to provide here and bring it back, or however you do that, to help out your family, like, you know, respect and kudos to you, man. That's a very very honorable move for you to do, especially while you're going to school and trying to cut your own teeth, if you will. Exactly. But it's important that you provide back to your family as well, and I'm glad that your folks have been always supportive, mine as well. So let's cut then from, so you're middle of your dentistry education, which I can only imagine is so much of your life. I mean, very, very busy. But I mean, when I saw you, it was 2 days ago? So it was a Tuesday afternoon.
Yes.
And you were in the middle of a square busking. How long were you there?
45 minutes.
45 minutes, and I just happened to walk by.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
And I'd never done that before. That was the first time I'd been there in that particular spot. My usual spot is sort of on South Bank, south of the river. but I'm sort of branching out now, trying to find out new places and stuff. It's just trial and error, really. But
so we just happened
to bump into me.
I love it, dude. The universe is beautiful, right?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It really is. Yeah.
So let's recap that again real quick. So I'm out with my family. We go to the National Gallery, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
As an artist, it's a gallery of paintings and all these other things from Monet and Vincent van Gogh and many other artists. And we walk out. I hear you from the top of the steps, which is probably, I don't know, 100 yards maybe from where you were performing. And I just heard you, and I was like, well, I know that's live music. I can tell. And somebody's singing. I'm going to go check them out.
Yeah.
Walk down there. I see you playing your guitar. And I heard you playing Nina Simone first, which blew my mind. Because I heard the song, and I love the song. And I was like, okay. And then I see you singing it. Yeah. And I was like, holy shit. And then I think if it wasn't the next song, eventually I heard you also. What was the second song I heard you?
Tracy Chapman.
Tracy Chapman. Thank you. Fast Car. Yeah, Tracy Chapman. So I heard you singing that one. And I was just like, man, this guy is killing it. Yeah. I was very impressed.
Thank you.
So, you know, I've told you multiple times that I appreciate your singing voice and your talent and everything else.
Thank you.
Why those songs? Why that style of music? I looked on your Instagram once I saw you, which is smart. You had your case out for tips, which is great, but you also had a nice sign that I recorded on my video, which is what got a lot of traction on my sites, which is why I hit you up, because I wanted to get you a little extra exposure across the pond on the other side.
Yeah.
But you had it there clear as day, you know. Owen Hughes on Instagram, with 2 V's, not a W.
2 V's, yeah. Oven is what people often say, but yeah, the 2 V's are supposed to be
2 V's, not a W. Yeah. Cool. So we'll get into the handle at the end, but anyway, so I saw that, which is great, and I was just very impressed. But then I started thinking to myself, like, why is this kid singing these songs?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking, these are songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s. In a totally different time period, culture, everything from you. Why? What draws you to that style of music?
So, I suppose I can't boast having some background in or loving blues or being massively into any kind of genre of music, and that's sort of come down to the fact that I just don't come from a musical background. And whatever I'd hear on the radio or whatever I'd listen to on YouTube, or if I heard somebody else doing a cover, and that's kind of where I got my inspiration for a lot of the songs that I busk with. And to be honest with you, I can't say that I'm massively into anything. I when I listen to a song, if it connects with me, it could be, it could in theory be heavy metal, it could be jazz, it could be blues, it could be anything. But no matter the age, no matter when it was created, if I find that connection and I feel that I can do something with it, I will always do it. So the Nina Simone song, for example, is just, I heard it and I loved it. Most people do. And I also, busking as well, you've got to consider your audience. So I've got quite a sort of large repertoire, and there's a huge variety. I could be singing Ed Sheeran 1 minute and then like Nina Simone the next. And I kind of have this thing where I have to look, and if I'm there with kids or teenagers, or I might play an Ed Sheeran song. If there's sort of an older sort of age demographic, then I'll change and I'll just switch up the song on the spot and I'll do something else. But having that kind of variety, I suppose in a sense, I'm scared to not have my own identity, which is something that I'm looking to do now, and I'm looking to find my sound and because I write a lot now. But having that variety has benefited me in the sense that I can play to anyone, and people, no matter who they are, there's a song that I will have that will connect with somebody, which is essentially all I'm trying to do. But yeah, it's really, really enjoyable.
That's very wise.
Yeah.
And I know you're new to this.
Yeah.
But that is such a skill that I think so many artists unfortunately don't learn at all or late in the game.
Yeah.
And that is just simply play to your audience. And now I'm not saying fabricate your sound to please the audience, that because then you're not authentic, and that's garbage. But I think you're so smart to have this set list of songs which are kind of new age, popular right now songs, and then songs that were popular 40 years ago. And you're right, the demographic is if who's watching me, who's giving me tips, who's enjoying this, and who's just walking by on their phone not paying attention. And for you to be conscious enough while you're playing to switch it up on the spot is that's a great skill to have. Real smart. So, do you ever have people come up and jam with you randomly? Drums or horns or singers or?
So, well, London's a beautiful place, but unfortunately, being in central London can come with a few drawbacks. I've had a few hagglers, a few people that have just. The other day, I had I'd started within 5 minutes. I'd had a drunk guy come up to me trying to offer me a beer whilst I'm singing. Another guy who'd come over with a little ukulele on his back and telling me he was a rapper whilst I'm performing. Another girl who, before I'd even set up, said I want to sing. And it really is tough. And anything. I mean, it is live at the end of the day, and it's on the street. It's about as raw as it gets. So loads of things can go wrong. Loads of things do go wrong, but it really hardens you up. And I think then when I've stepped to do open mics or I've done competitions like I've done recently. I've found that so much easier because of my busking background and because I've had to deal with a lot of stuff on the street. But yeah, I get all sorts of people coming up to me and asking me things, and you just got to kind of roll with it and just go with the flow.
So I'm going to save the competition conversation for another time. Mm-hmm. But I would like to talk to you about how busking specifically helped increase your comfortability playing in front of people, because you had mentioned that starting off early, which I mean almost every artist does, no matter what, you're unsure of your sound, you're self-conscious, you don't know if you are great or you suck. I mean, like you're also playing guitar and you're singing, so there's two skills there. And with my band, we've busked over the years on tour, and we have 5 of us. So if one of us isn't feeling it, then the rest will pick it up. Or if someone's got a hurt vocal, someone else will do the singing, and we have guitars. I play didgeridoo and drums and things. We have all these different sounds, so there's a lot going on. You are all alone. If you're not feeling it, it could go wrong in a hurry. If your voice blows. Now, lucky for you, which again is also smart, I want to talk about the magnitude of busking here in London versus the U.S. in a second. But you have a microphone, you have an amplifier. You're getting heard, like I said, 100 yards away down the block. You're not just on a corner yelling vocals, which blows out your voice quick. So how did you go from kind of a timid, new, fresh musician not wanting to play and being comfortable in front of playing people to jumping out in the street, dude? Where, I mean, you're in London. For me, coming from, way far away, London is one of the biggest world cities. It's literally one of the biggest cities in the world. And you're playing in a square where thousands of people are walking by you any given minute, paying attention or not, and they're in your face. And in my opinion, you're crushing it.
Thank you so much.
So how do you bridge that gap there, and how has busking helped you pursue maybe more of a interest in playing live in front of people?
So I'd say my journey with busking started off back in Wales, actually. So I like I said, I live in a little town. I know everyone. Everyone knows me. So they have this music event in my music festival every year in my town, Monmouth Music Festival, and alongside it they encourage buskers, they encourage people to go onto the street. So the very, very first time I went busking was in my market, in the market square in my little town, and I was petrified. No matter what anybody says, anyone that goes out on the street is very brave, because it is one of the hardest things to do. So, but I had started off, I didn't even, I think I had a classical guitar, I didn't even have equipment, I had nothing, just, voice just in plein air. And my first time I did it was a bit rubbish, but people were stopping and putting money in and smiling at me and taking pictures, and that feeds me, that makes me feel so much better, it gave me so much more confidence. And I did a little bit more. Then I came to London and I thought, I'm never going to be able to do it in London. Then about 2 or 3 years ago for Christmas, my parents, because they'd also encouraged me to do it. They were obviously the first people to ever hear me sing, and they back me. Obviously, my mum, I always tell her, Mum, you're always going to tell me that I'm fantastic. You're my mum, that's your job. But she's like, no, you're genuinely. So they got me this street amp, this Cube Roland busking amp, which is a big amp, and it's what a lot of people use on the street. I had a mic stand and a mic, and I just plugged my guitar in then. But I've been here for 3 years, and I've only just started doing it the last few months. For those sort of 2 or 3 years in between, I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the, I was scared about, the licensing and how, I didn't want to get fined. I didn't want to. Then one day, a couple of months ago, I just came to the end of my tether with it, and I was like, I need to just do it. I just need to just do it. And the worst case scenario is I get moved on, or I get told not to, or I play a bad song and somebody's going to listen to that for 10 seconds and walk on. So starting was hard, but once you start, it's just the best thing in the world. And having that YOLO moment in it, just get out there and just do it. That's kind of what I've done.
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah. That's perfect. And I had a very similar start when I started performing myself when I was about 19.
Yeah.
In front of, bar clubs and festivals and things. I played in kind of a funk band, but I was the only vocalist. So I would just be up there rapping for like 3 hours straight shows, and I was the only vocalist.
Really?
And I was just self-conscious about it, and I'd just be kind of quiet and covered over. And after a couple of years of being on stage, I got more and more comfortable, and people would be like, "Hey, you're really good at this," or like, "Hey, you have great enthusiasm," or compliments. I was like, "Okay, like." Awesome.
Yeah.
And then it just became like boom, and now I can talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I like I hit you up out of the blue.
Man.
The worst case scenario, you don't answer me before I leave London.
Exactly.
Like bummer, but not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Or hey man, no thank you, later, and fine. But I did hit you up, you did answer, here we are, and this is great, you know? So I think it's always worth taking a chance. You mentioned you were kind of nervous about the licensing and everything like that.
Yeah.
Explain that because, again, on my side, the listeners, primarily U.S. musicians, there is busking, of course. I've busked many, many, many times with a band by myself, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. But it's different. There are certain cities, Vegas, Chicago, New York, big cities and areas, New Orleans, things like that, where busking is a lifestyle, okay? And it's also kind of a licensing and permits and things. Yeah. But other times you just kind of put up somewhere and you play, and if people don't like you, you just move on and they kick you out, whatever. Here it seems like it's a legit community. Like this is it's almost it's a job. Like it seems like for me very much more serious in general in London. Is that an England Europe thing, or is that just kind of a London specific? Or go into that. How is busking in general around here? Because it seems like much more formal in general than it is in the US.
So busking in London is, I suppose London is a little bit of a bubble in the sense that you do, it's the biggest city in the UK. I can't talk on behalf of Europe and other cities in Europe. I'd love to go and see what it's like someday. But in terms of London, it's a bit more complicated because London's split up into boroughs. So each borough council has a different standpoint on busking. But by and large, the general rule is busking is perfectly legal on public land as long as you're not really causing too much of a disturbance. Wherever you want. There are certain places, like in the City of London, where they're a bit more controlled, and you might be moved on, or you might be in a certain place where you're blocking stuff, and you've got to be respectful of businesses and stuff like that. But essentially, there's a buskers code that they have on the Busking London website that I read. It's just basically just don't be a douche. Just play it by ear. You don't consider your environment, consider the people that are walking past, and be respectful of the businesses and stuff that are around you. In terms of London, it is different in that you've got places where they've tried to, or they have enforced this licensing scheme, and you'll see if you walk around London, there's pictures, especially on the Underground, for example, in big train stations like Waterloo and Euston, and then also on South Bank by the Tate Modern. They've got these designated pitch areas where people audition. So there's an audition process to get into there, run through Busking London, and if you get through, then you get your slot, and you may get I think it's 2 hours or something like that. The auditions are really, really competitive, and they don't open them very often. So, for in my case, I obviously missed the auditions. I didn't know what was going on. I just went to a place where I'd seen buskers busking before, not too far from where I study at university, but I could see that it wasn't a designated spot. So I went up one day and I just spoke to them and I said, "Look, how does it work around here?" And that's kind of the way busking is, I suppose, in the rest of the UK. Especially in my town, people just busk. You don't need to. If you are causing a massive disturbance, they're going to move you on. But I'm sort of on the edge, I'm in London, I'm busking, but spaces like where you saw me yesterday, also in Leicester Square, they're not specifically licensed, so people just queue up, and that's kind of how it works.
So you kind of just have, general rule of thumb is obviously, don't be belligerent, don't be, cussing and things, and, be kind, but then also, so where you were busking, when I saw you, if I were to pull up my fiddle 20 yards away, Yeah. Is it just kind of first come, first serve, and it's just kind of the rule of like, hey man, you're in my bubble.
Yeah. So
it is kind of play it that way.
Have like this kind of mutual respect. And I didn't know any of the buskers. There were quite a few, and obviously it depends on your act. Like there were some people, statues, and people dressed up
silent.
Silent. So obviously that's not going to have the same effect as somebody singing with a mic. I think there was a preacher actually the other side of the steps. So that there is sometimes some conflict, and I'm sure there has been in the past cases where buskers have sort of fallen out, and that's really not good. But I mean, I certainly am really respectful of the people that do the same thing, and everyone deserves a fair chance at the end of the day, no matter who you are. If you're willing to come out and put yourself out there, as long as you organise it amongst each other and you give each other a fair share, then that's all good.
Speaking of putting yourself out there, you were 13, I believe.
Yes.
You recorded a song, which I'll let you introduce here in a second.
Yeah.
One of my favorite songs, actually one of my great friends back home. It might be her favorite song ever.
Really?
But I'll let you introduce that in just a second. But basically, you recorded the video on Facebook.
Yeah.
It went viral, and that kind of made you think, okay, maybe this music thing is more than me just jamming in my room.
Yeah.
Please explain kind of from the beginning what the song was, why you recorded that song, and how that post kind of vaulted you. I mean, what were 8 years? That's 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So how you've gone from there to here?
Yeah. So the song is "Let Her Go" by Passenger, and it was a song that the very first time I heard it, I thought this was just such a beautiful song. Obviously, coming from a classical guitar background, that was what I was doing at the time. I loved the finger pick. I loved the melody of the guitar and the backing and the finger picking was something that I was really interested in learning. So I started off one day and I just typed it into tabs how to play. I think I watched a YouTube video. That's what I used to do. People teaching me, and I just slowly learnt the song on the guitar. That's how I did it first. Then I thought, wow, I know how to play it on guitar, so I might add a bit of vocal. I might try and do it myself. And I knew the song so well, I didn't even have to learn the lyrics. It was just, it flowed, and that was the very, very first song that I learned on the guitar, like singing wise. And yeah, I just posted it on Facebook. My mum told me to, and people, it was really well received. And that gave me, I mean, I look back at it now and I think it's awful.
Sure.
But that was kind of the starting point, and and that song will always be really sort of poignant with me. And it's always the one I tend to open up with as well when I'm busking, because it reminds me of that time, the first song and obviously for me it has a bit more meaning. Mm-hmm. Other people hear it and they think, because I've played it so many times, like I could probably do it, to Passenger, and he'd probably be like, the song better than I do.
Yeah.
That's how much I played it. But it's like it's that safe one, and that always settles me down. I play it. It's not one I have to shout or have to challenge really vocally, but I can just sit there, play it, and people know it. Everyone knows the song, and people connect with it. It's a really deep song. So it's one of my favorite songs, and I love playing it.
That's beautiful. And Passenger is also English.
Yes, he is. He's English. He's from Brighton, I think. And he was someone that I'd always sort of followed growing up. I suppose I'm influenced by him and mostly his arrangements. I love like the acoustic kind of style. And then obviously Ed Sheeran as well came into the equation when I was about 15, and I wanted to be like Ed Sheeran, and I even got the same guitar as Ed Sheeran. I saved up for that.
Oh yeah.
And that's the one that I was busking with up until pretty recently. But I thought then, I don't really want to be an Ed Sheeran tribute act. Yeah. I want to do my own thing, so I got another guitar. But yeah, I love Passenger. Love Passenger's music.
So these artists I know very well now.
Yeah.
But I hadn't heard of Passenger maybe 3 years ago, give or take. Yeah. And Ed Sheeran really became Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
The last couple of years is when I found out about him. But you've been listening to both of these guys for 6-8 years.
Yeah. So Ed Sheeran was someone that I listened to. I suppose when his first album came out, when he was probably about my age, 19, 20, something like that. And he came to London, so he's got a story that he lived in Norwich and he came to London, and he also did a bit of busking in London. But I was so inspired by his whole vibe and the way he songwrites, and it's very raw, and it's, and he probably admittedly himself, he doesn't go for the looks, he doesn't, try and, flaunt himself as one of these pop stars that, is going to attract all the girls. It is about the music, and that's something that I really, really looked up to growing up, and it was something that I sought to pursue myself. But yeah, Ed Sheeran was a massive influence on me when I was growing up.
So there's something that we talked about briefly before we started this interview that I want to go into a little bit more in depth on here, so that I can get your perspective of things. And I think about it with Ed Sheeran, and we talked about Adele and Tom York of Radiohead, who I've been a big fan of for a real long time. And that is essentially speaking in an English accent, but singing in more or less an American accent, if you want to call it that, but just not your English accent, I guess, right? I've thought about this for years. I've had a lot of conversations with friends of mine. There's a great reggae band that I've had the pleasure of meeting and playing with. They're from London. They're called the Skints. Great reggae band here, but they're kind of similar. So when you talk to them, their accent to me is very thick. Really? I have to pay attention to make sure I understand. But when they're singing, it's not hard to understand them at all. And to me, that's so interesting. We talked about it a little bit before, but what is your perspective on that? And do you notice that you do it? Because just hearing you for the first time when you sang is when I heard you the first time, right? And I heard a certain voice. And then when I met you, and now we're talking, it's a totally different voice, right? And I just think I think that's very unique.
It's interesting, and I suppose I'm not the only one. A lot of pop singers, a lot of British pop singers sing with this kind of American twang, and it's just I have no idea where it comes from. To be honest, I obviously I'm copying people that when I'm doing covers, I listen to songs and through the media, maybe that's got an influence on it. Always listening to sort of American media, American shows. Even when I was growing up as a kid watching Disney Channel, that was always so it is massive. There's a massive stamp of America in the UK. I suppose from a musical perspective, if I were to sing in a British accent, it just wouldn't sound, in my opinion, it wouldn't sound right. Who started that maybe years ago, I have no idea. Maybe it has something to do with the softness of the American accent and the vowels, and way the British might be a bit more closed, something that I'm just spitballing, but
sure.
It is really interesting, like you said, and I don't know where it comes from, but I'd be interested to find out as well.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. There's a lot of the kind of the older bands, like the Rolling Stones for me in particular, still sound English. When Mick Jagger sings, he still sounds English. But the Beatles don't always.
They don't. No.
Now when they speak, it's very thick. But not when they sing. Led Zeppelin, same thing. I mean, there's a lot of these artists, Pink Floyd, and a lot of these classic rock bands that sound completely different when they're speaking versus when they're singing. And I think that's very interesting. So for you, it's a subconscious thing. You don't try to sound different than.
I assume it's the same for other singers as well. I don't think about the accent I'm singing in. I just sing, and whatever comes out comes out. If it sounds good, it sounds good. But I don't pick my guitar up, go to sing a song, and think I'm going to sing it in this accent. It just happens.
Sure.
It's quite a natural thing.
And it doesn't change whether you're singing an American song or an English song, or.
No, I suppose if I were to cover a song that somebody had sang in a bit more of a British, I might probably do it in a more of a British. I'm not really sure. I haven't come across a song yet where I needed to do that. But I assume, that's just mimicking. It's just the way it's been.
That's cool. I think it's really interesting. And there's a lot of even American singers who have a different voice when they sing. That's very interesting. What are some, musically, what are some short and long-term goals for you? I mean, you've basically gone from kind of just, playing alone to entering a couple of competitions. You've started busking to, very large crowds comparative to what I see people busking for back home. I mean, the crowd I was standing in watching you and just walking around that square, there was like thousands of people out there.
There's a lot.
And that's just very impressive to me that you're able to just kind of go out there and be in your zone and sound great. What are some short and long-term goals for you in general? Do you wish to tour? Do you want to cut albums? Do you want to have a band? Do you want to do a solo thing? Like, what's your vibe, man? What do you want to get done?
I suppose in the short term, it is just learning everything that I can. I'm obviously, like I said, quite new to it in terms of the industry, not so much music, but in terms of the industry and how it all works, and finding my feet there, finding my sound, writing songs, which I have been doing a bit more recently. I haven't actually uploaded anything yet because I'm kind of holding them close to my chest for the right time. But I suppose, finding my identity, finding my place, I suppose, in the short term is something that I'm looking to do. Meeting new people, meeting people that, you know, are in the industry that have experience and can offer me, you know, I've met a few people now, even just through busking on the street, people like, well, yourself, you know, you obviously, you're more into it than I am so far. So getting from anyone, any piece of information that I can get to make myself better is something that I'm open to. I suppose more in the long term, obviously I have got dentistry to consider, so I'm staying with that. You know, my parents would actually kill me if I you know, went off the path. But I'm really happy that I have, you know, dentistry, and I'm not here for music. I'm here to study, and that's good because I don't have the pressure then of, oh, I need to go out and I need to do this. I need to go and perform this gig. I need to write this song. Or I just do what I feel, and that's really good for me. I would love long term to tour and to be all over the world, and if that happens, it happens. But equally, if it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, it's not pressure that I'm putting on myself, and I think that's really playing in my favour at the minute, because I'm singing because I want to sing, not because, you know, I'm pursuing anything in particular. If it happens, I would be absolutely gassed, as they say. Gassed in London means happy. But yeah, that long term, I'd love to do. I would love to be, you know, performing in stadiums. That would be my dream. But I'm under no illusion that it's a very saturated industry and it's very, very difficult. And sometimes it just takes a bit of luck. But you know, being on the street in London isn't really a bad place to start.
It's not, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you're new. You're a young artist.
Yeah.
And to be able to do the things that you've been doing that I saw you do the other day, it blows my mind, kind of, because I've been doing it for 10, 12 years, and in some aspects, just in the busking, like, you're far ahead of where I'm even at. You know what I mean? I've been around a long time, so I know more about the industry, quote unquote, and a lot of like the behind the scenes shit. I've got a lot of that down just because I've been around longer.
Yeah.
But I think you're on the great path, and you know, I'm a music nerd, and we're talking here to talk about music because that's how I found you. But I just want to give you respect and appreciation for having your priorities proper as a younger person. Just like, you know what you're here to do.
Yeah.
You're here with the intention of setting your goal and achieving it and doing right for your family, which is very honorable, man.
Thank you very
so
much.
I appreciate that you're doing it. And in the meantime, when you have time for yourself, your thing is music, and you're able to do that, but your eyes on the prize otherwise. And so that's awesome, man, because it's hard to stay focused these days.
It really is.
And especially if you're in a high intense field like dentistry or medical anything. So respect to you for putting that forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. For now, when can for the people, because for the people listening who are actually on your side, you're out busking. How often are you busking? Do you actually play formal gigs, or are you just kind of out busking for now?
Yes.
What do you do? And then for my folks who aren't aware of your music yet and things, where can they find your music for now? And just kind of build up your networks.
So, like I said, it's all been the last few months have been really quick. A lot of things have happened. Obviously, I've been busking a bit more. I've broken up for summer break from university, so I'm staying in London. All of my friends have gone home, but I'm staying here to pursue this and to earn my way. And so that's something that I've been doing. That's why I've been busking a lot more recently. I suppose when August comes back around and I go back into university, I'm going to be busking less, but I might have a bit more of a regular kind of, I might do it on a certain day. So that's kind of where I'm at with the busking. In terms of gigs, I have been approached by people to do gigs, and that's something that I'm looking to do, and I'm really happy to do that. And people actually offering me money to sing, which is crazy. I've got some things lined up, especially over the summer, and then going forward. People are contacting me almost every day to ask me to do something, which is lovely. So whilst that's rolling, I'm just going to keep doing it. But obviously going back to uni next month is going to be a bit of a thing to juggle, but I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really enjoying the music right now. In terms of my posts and stuff, my Instagram is my biggest sort of platform at the minute, and like I said, it's the @Oven Music with 2 V's, OVVEN. And that's kind of where I'm obviously looking to branch out more. If I get into a studio, I'm looking to post things on like Spotify and the SoundCloud and all that stuff. I also have all of the stuff. I made sure, because I fully appreciate how big social media is these days, and having that little sign with my Instagram on has really served me well.
Well, we're here because of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I do have my Facebook and my Twitter and all that, but I'm focusing on the Instagram at the minute because that seems to be the best platform for me. And people are following me because they want to follow me, which is really good. And people from the street that see me, they can put me on their story and I can repost them, and I'm really enjoying doing that and seeing all the people messaging me. It's lovely. It's really, really lovely. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
That's great, man. And you've mentioned it already, but I like to just end the interview with the last question. That is just what brings you joy. And you've mentioned it multiple times in the chat here, but just to sum it up, like what brings you joy, Owen?
So I suppose it does sound a little bit corny.
It doesn't sound corny. It's authentic.
It's very authentic. Yeah. Okay. So like I said to you earlier, I think for me, seeing the smile from someone, even whether it's on the street or equally whether it's in dental school, whether I've treated somebody and they feel really good about what I've done, being able to enlighten somebody's life like that is just the most amazing thing. And when I am busking on the street from a musical perspective, and I see the look in somebody's eyes when they see a song that they recognise a song, or they like the way that I do it, or they give me a smile, or they give me a thumbs up, that's what feeds me. That's what gives me joy, essentially, and that's what inspires me to carry on and to meet new people and to pursue it. And it's just a lovely, lovely world. It really is. And being able to pursue music is just a privilege. And to being able to touch people in any way that I can is just cool. And that's what brings me joy.
Well, you've given me joy today, man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time. This has been a real treat. Like I said, I'm day 4 in London. It's been an incredible experience. So far, this is my first trip to the UK, to Europe, across the pond at all. And it's been an absolute blast. I happened to stumble upon you by chance. Some people would think it was coincidence. I like to think of it as synchronicity.
Nice.
And so thank you again for responding right away to my message, being willing to meet me here at the cafe, and giving me some of your minutes, man, because I think you're a really special talent. Great spirit. Your enthusiasm and your energy, you've been smiling this whole time, and it's a good energy, man, and that enthusiasm you can't teach. That's a genuine, authentic vibe from you, and I know that you're going to go plenty far, and I'm excited to hear about some up-and-coming things that you have in the works right now. I want to hear those results. And if and when you do cut an album or cut some records, let me know, man, and I'd love to get some across the pond.
Thank you so much, man. Really
have you again. So
thank you for having me.
It was a blast. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Owen Hughes.
Thanks for tuning in to the More Than Music podcast. We appreciate it if you'd leave us an honest rating and review wherever you're listening to the podcast. And please also subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all social media platforms at Soulseed Music. That's at SOLSEED Music. For those that leave a 5-star rating and review, be sure to listen for your comments to be read on a future episode. Stay tuned for our next episode, and feel free to share this podcast with a friend or a family member, and let's expand the branches of our family tree. We appreciate you vibing with us today, and we'll catch you next time on More Than Music.